I had to cross this double road. So there were cars coming this way and then there were cars coming this way. And then when you cross halfway, there's like a little section where pedestrians can stand to wait to cross to the other side. So I've crossed from this side and there's this guy, really, really tall, got those pants on that halfway hang around their bottom, sort of really kind of loose. He's got this blonde short hair. And he just walked with me to the middle. Now, I don't know where he came from because before that I'd gone for my walk and he wasn't with me then, but all of a sudden he was there. We crossed to the middle. And then we're waiting in the middle to wait for cars to come from the other direction. And he sort of looked at me like this and gave me a little smile, and no words were spoken. It was just this little smile. And then we walked across the road. And then all of a sudden I felt, rather than saw, I felt him go back across the road and then behind a Perspex bus station. And then he just disappeared. And I'm thinking, this is just too weird. I must be imagining things, right? And then it came to me, I know who that was. That was Archangel Michael. And it was the little smile and the very tall and everything. It's like, oh, that is so cool. Like, ask and you shall receive, right? And it was just amazing. It was just like I had absolutely no doubt that he came to show me himself.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of Healing Millions podcast. Today, I have an honor and privilege to have amazing Dagmar Bryant on my show. Dagmar, thank you so much for being here. Girl, you studied law. You're talking to spirits. You're a medium. And we want to know how that happened. And I just want to say thank you so much for being on my show. I'm so honored to have you here.
Oh, Nina, look, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure and an honor likewise to be on the show with you. Goodness, you've started me with a whale of a question. So I guess a long, long time ago, I was in customer service, I was in secretarial work, but I also studied law. So I have that very corporate kind of background. But I also remember from a very young age just knowing stuff. And it was like things about just family and friends, either something I knew was going to happen or I knew information. And there came a time when I was in my 30s, and you see, I studied law quite late. So I was what they call a mature age student, like anything over 25 and you're a mature age student, right? So I studied law, and then I had a friend who I studied law with. And one day she said to me, Dagmar, how would you like to study tarot? And I said, oh, no, this is bad. No, let's not do tarot and all that kind of stuff. And the guy that I was in a relationship with at the time, he actually said, chill, it's okay. It's not that bad. And so Anna was my friend's name. Anna and I went to study tarot as well as law. And it was absolutely amazing. I just took to it like a duck takes to water. And from doing my initial tarot course, I did an advanced tarot course. Then I went into mediumship and then hypnotherapy and all sorts of aspects of the woo-woo kind of world. And I absolutely loved it. And at the time I was still studying law, but basically there came this one day, and I still remember it as clear as yesterday. It was a Sunday morning. I was the first one up. The family was still sleeping. I'm having my cup of coffee. It's a beautiful spring day. And I just knew deep within myself, because I was due to start my next module for the law course, and of all things, it was taxation law. And I just didn't want to do it. It was like I was just done. I knew I was done in law. And would you believe the next week I quit my job and I quit law school? My poor father nearly had a heart attack. What on earth are you doing? You're going to do what? Become a psychic? What? And I went from being a very, I guess, in my dad's eyes, respected to somewhere down like the black sheep of the family. So that did not go down very well, but I knew it was the absolute right thing for me to do. and I built my own business in Australia, and I've had my own business here as well. And now I have a podcast which I talk about angels, and it's just a beautiful way of helping people connect into that other world. I've moved away from, being a psychic medium a little bit. I still have all the gifts and all the qualities and all that kind of stuff, and I still do the occasional reading for people. But for me, it's much more about the angelic side of things, because I've had so many signs from angels, and I have my own story on there of how I was saved by an angel when I was about 20, 21 years old. And I just want to share with people that beautiful other side of a world that's there that not everybody realizes is there. We're so stuck in the logic: go to work, go to bed, get up, rinse, repeat, do everything the same way. And we forget about our spiritual side. This is really about helping other people bring out that spiritual side in themselves.
Thank you so much for sharing. Um, I really want to go back to the moment when you first time realized I can talk to spirits. How was that experience for you?
Well, when I went to my first, I guess you would call it, psychic development class, and it was one of those moments where I think I was at that stage I'd already done the tarot classes and everything. And what happened at that weekend, because it was a weekend thing, it was like a remembering, because I, like everyone else, had buried this gift, if you like. I had buried my knowledge. I had just left it behind somewhere. And the lady who was the teacher, she was standing up there and she was talking about, angels and spirit and guides and all that kind of stuff. And I just burst into tears, because all of a sudden there was this realization of something that I had forgotten but was a part of me. And it was like I had forgotten that side, and then all of a sudden it was there again. It was like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. And just this wealth of emotion just came out. In answer to your question, though, how did I know? I never knew I was different. I just used to know things. And people would just look at me funny. Like, I remember being in high school, and we did this funny science experiment one day, and it was with the is it the Zener cards, with the cards with the circle and the stars and all that. And I was working with this one other lady, and I got so many of them right. And she said, "Oh, you are so good at this." And I didn't know that I was different than everybody else. And it wasn't until much later that I realized that not everybody does what I do. It was just really quite bizarre. But that weekend at that course with that psychic development was like, oh, it's just like the floodgates opened of all the remembering and of all the things that had ever happened in my past, of just knowing stuff. I just didn't realize I was any different. It was just normal for me.
That's a beautiful story. I think a lot of us are using our spiritual gifts without even realizing we are using them. And that's the story I hear every single day. And I really want to go back to that moment when you realized, okay, you did the reading and you guessed a lot of things. And all of a sudden you realize you have this special gift. What changed in your life after that moment?
That I wanted it to be part of me, that I wanted to acknowledge it, that this is me. And I kind of, I'm trying to say this in a very diplomatic way. It's almost, how people who might have something very private that they don't want to share with their family, and then they come out, so to speak, whether it's about their sexuality, about something about their character or their belief system or whatever it is, but they come out. And that's what it felt like for me, that I needed to come out and really own who I am. That was part of my purpose, to help people, to help others. And at the end of the day, if somebody doesn't like that you're acknowledging that you're very intuitive, or that you're an empath, or whatever word that it is, the problem probably is with them, not with you, because it's a part of you, you know? So it was all about acknowledging that.
the story you shared right now is the story that so many of us are going through, like acknowledging ourselves and really owning our gifts and saying, hey, this is who I am, and standing in our truth and saying, you know, this is who I am. You can like it or not. That's okay. But this is who I am now. And I really love the story that you shared right now. And I really want to go back to your beautiful gift you have to talk to angels. For somebody who is listening this or watching this episode, um, the first thing what they really want to know is like, how do you do that? Because I have been working with so many people over the years, and the first thing what they ask me, how can I talk to angels? I need to talk to them. Like I just have a feeling that they believe angels are something outside of them, and they are like, this is my perception. I experience angels within myself. Feel the energy within myself. Everything what we experience is within ourselves. And very often I notice that people just like, when you talk about the angels, they want to put them on pedestal, and like, oh, like glorify them. So what is your experience with angels?
Say anyone who wants to connect with their angels, just do it through a conversation. Because if you imagine that we have this physical world that we're in, and there's also the spiritual world, which is just on the other side of a very thin veil. They can hear everything that we say, they can hear everything that we do. And if you're talking to them, it's like talking to loved ones in the spirit world, or, people who've passed is what I mean, or your guardian angels. It doesn't really matter. Anyone who's on the other side of that veil still has the ability to hear you. The only thing that's different is that now it's not the same as the conversation like we're having, where we're easy to communicate with, because they're sitting at a different kind of higher vibration. And the biggest message that I have for that is, if you hear something back, just trust that it is absolutely correct. That logical brain go, oh, no, 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 that can't be right, or no, I just made that up. You need to park that. It just is real. I had a story. I interviewed a lady on my podcast, and I released her episode, I think it was only last week, and she is a scientist, was a scientist, and she talks about how she did this journey herself, and she talked about her guardian angel and said, well, I know you're there. And she's telling the story about, well, how do I know your name? And she had the radio on, and she had been in the shower, and then the Paul Simon song came on, Just Call Me Al. Now, some people might say that's a coincidence, but it's not. She goes, Al, okay. What about cool names like Michael and Gabriel and this and that, the other, right? But sometimes we just need to accept it in its simplest form, that what you're getting then is that you need to trust. If you ask a question, don't expect the format to come in a particular way. Just know that it'll come. You might hear it from your angel. You might see the answer on the sign as you're walking past, or a truck that goes by or something like that. Just know that it's there. They're listening to you. So the easiest way to drum up a conversation is just to start talking to them. You might like to do it through a meditation if that makes you feel comfortable, to, lift your own vibration and see what comes. But you can just do it by talking to them.
I love that. I love how you explain it. It can be really simple, but
Yeah,
we
yeah.
overcomplicate everything. And this is the first thing I notice when people want to connect with angels and spirits on the other side. They expect them to look like humans, and they should look like a handsome humans. So this is what people expect them to look like. And if they don't see them in a human form, they get very disappointed. And in my perspective, like, I see angels as a light, and I just feel the energy. What is your perspective on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Um, I would say to you, angels are going to show themselves to you in a form that you understand or that you can identify with. So, for example, I've absolutely seen Archangel Michael a few times in different forms. And there was this. May I tell a story about one time when I saw Archangel Michael?
Yes, please share the story.
So this was when we were living in Australia, and I was reading a particular angel book because I've got a doctorate in philosophy. Sorry, a doctor of philosophical sciences is the actual correct term, and that was where I was doing a thesis on angels and archangels, the proof for their existence. And I thought to myself, do you know, it'd be really cool just to see angels like every now and then in person. I know they've helped me heaps of times, including my car accident when I was a pedestrian. But I was specifically thinking about Archangel Michael. And so this one morning, I used to go for a walk around where I used to live in near the house in Victoria, which is in Melbourne. And this one morning, I had to cross this double road. So there were cars coming this way, and then there were cars coming this way. And then when you cross halfway, there's like a little section where pedestrians can stand to wait to cross to the other side. So I've crossed from this side, and there's this guy, really, really tall, got those pants on that halfway hang around their bottom, you know, sort of really kind of loose. He's got this blonde, short hair. And he just walked with me to the middle. Now, I don't know where he came from because before that I'd gone for my walk and he wasn't with me then, but all of a sudden he was there. We crossed to the middle. And then we're waiting in the middle to wait for cars to come from the other direction. And he sort of looked at me like this and gave me a little smile, and no words were spoken. It was just this little smile. And then we walked across the road. And then all of a sudden I felt, rather than saw, I felt him go back across the road and then behind a Perspex bus station. And then he just disappeared. And I'm thinking, oh, this is just too weird. I must be imagining things, right? And then it came to me, I know who that was. That was Archangel Michael. And it was the little smile and the very tall and everything. It's like, oh, that is so cool. Like, ask and you shall receive, right? And it was just amazing. It was just like I had absolutely no doubt that he came to show me himself, yep, in his human form, because in a way that for whatever reason that was right. And to say, yep, I'm around, I heard you, thanks, and now I'm off again.
Oh, that's a beautiful story. I think very often we block ourselves by having specific expectations how they look like. If we allow ourselves to show themselves as we can receive, we'll open so many doors to connect with them. Yeah. And for somebody who is listening or watching this interview and thinking, okay, but how do I know this is my intuition telling me, and these are like the spirits talking to me? How can I be sure that this voice I hear is the voice from angels, from spirit, but not like I'm not making things up?
I guess the biggest word there is trust. You've got to learn to trust that communication is happening, that it's not just in your head. Unless you have a particular mental illness, right? Most of us aren't, you know, mentally unwell. You just have to trust that is part of this process. That is how they communicate, you know, telepathically a lot of the time. You know, a thought might pop into your head, and it depends on what kind of a person you are. If you're a very touchy-feely person, you might feel it within yourself. If you are very visual, you might get that image. You might be very auditory, which means you hear it through sounds or music or whatever that happens to be. So you kind of have to trust and know who you are in how you receive information. And that's what Spirit is going to use to bring you information.
I love that. I really love like you already have a skills like leaning into what is working for you right now and pay attention to that. And I really love what you said. And I really want to know who are the angels you're working with and how that works?
It depends, actually, is the short answer to that. It depends on the situation. For example, I am the biggest wuss when it comes to going to the dentist. So I always call on Archangel Raphael, because I had a terrible experience when I was a kid. Was a dentist actually put the injection, the anesthetic, into my mouth and then didn't allow it to work. And it was, I was crying and I was upset because it hurt. And he tried to say, "Oh, no, it doesn't hurt." And I'm going, "Yeah, it does hurt." Like I'm probably about 10 years old. So I've always had that fear of dentists. So now I ask Archangel Raphael to step in, and I can actually, in my mind, because Archangel Raphael has that heart chakra and green kind of energy associated with him, I can feel his presence standing in the corner of the dentist's room as I'm being looked after. So that's an example. If you need healing or if you need something to do with your health, Archangel Raphael is your go-to. Archangel Michael's my go-to for a lot of things, because I just feel I can understand his presence. I've worked with him for a long time and had a number of experiences to do with Archangel Michael, but I'm also now expanding, working with some of the other angels and just slowly adapting to feel their presence a bit and getting to know what they're a little bit about. And I had a guest on the show also who talked about this, and she said, sometimes you need to then just stop and stay still and maybe do a little bit of research. But if you're then wanting to connect with a particular angel, like, for example, Archangel Ariel, if you want to connect in with her, then be in stillness and then get a feel for how her presence is different than Michael or Metatron or Raphael or Azrael or any of them, and just tune into that, feel into that, because we're all energy. Just think about how you connect with people in real life. There are going to be people, like in a work situation or in a networking situation, you go, "Oh yeah, I could easily have a conversation with that person," and it just flows nicely. And the same happens with the other side. Some conversations are going to be easier to have just because of that vibration and how you connect with them.
I love that. Like, find angels that you feel comfortable being with and talking to. It's like we have so many people around us, but not everybody's our best friend. It's almost like
That's
that.
true. It is exactly like that. And I would say, even before you think specifically about connecting with specific angels like I've just mentioned, why don't you start by connecting with your guardian angel, if you believe that we have one? I know Catholics believe we have guardian angels, and guardian angels, they're your go-to, if you like. They're going to be the ones closest to you, helping you direct your life path. So if you're ever not sure about which way forward, why don't you connect into your guardian angel first and say, "Guardian angel, I really would like to have a chat. Can you help me? I'm feeling like I'm at a crossroads. I don't know which way forward. Can we work on this together?" And just see what comes back.
I love that. I really, really love that. So I really want to talk about something that I see is a new trend. People using AI to channel messages from the other side. What do you think about that?
This is interesting because I haven't actually heard that. I haven't heard that. This is new information for me. It's a concept that I'm kind of foreign to, because I'm very intuitive. I like to have my one-to-one conversation with angels. I don't feel like I generally need an intermediary. And the thing with AI is, how can AI know? We are, and I ask that as a serious question, not to be answered, but as a consideration. Let's think about, how can AI know? AI doesn't have feelings. AI doesn't have emotions. It's a virtual presence, if you like. But how can they connect into that other realm? So how can they know? How can you trust that that information is coming from your angels? Now, the other argument, the other side of that argument could be that your angels, your spirit, your guides are listening and watching what you're doing, and they can see that you're saying into AI, help me with the answer to that question, and they may be using that. I'm not liking that answer as much as I like my first answer, though, because you're still dealing with an entity that is not connected to our spirituality. AI is not spiritual.
I still have my own doubts about that, but I was listening to podcast episode with Matthias De Stefano, who said, like, everything's just frequency. Why couldn't they use AI to deliver messages if we are thinking about it like that we are connecting using frequency? And I was thinking, like, okay, that's a very interesting concept. I never thought about that, but it can be true. But on the other side, like when you ask ChatGPT to deliver messages on the other side, I'm not sure that I like the message I get. That 'cause it really sounds like a very robotic, like it really wants to make me happy with the answer. I still don't have a really firm opinion about that, but I see that as an option for the future and to watch what is going to happen in the future. Dagmar, I just want to say thank you so much for being on my podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience. Can you please share how can people connect with you and share a little bit about your podcast, because your podcast is such a beautiful, beautiful podcast sharing angelic stories from people all around the world.
Thank you. All right. Well, I do have a Facebook page, so you can check me out, Dagmar Bryant. Very simple. I try and keep everything as simple as possible. I do have a LinkedIn page as well, and the podcast is called Angelic Footprints. I have a Facebook group. You can check it out on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite platform for listening to podcasts. So it'll stream on the various platforms, and just have a listen to and see if that's something that you connect with. And if you want to reach out to me, my email is info@dagmarbryant.com. And I'd love to answer any of your questions.
Before we wrap up this interview, I would love to ask you one last question for people who want to learn more about angels, want to connect with them, receive messages from them. And if you think about your own journey and your own path, how you open up your spiritual skills and start using them in your everyday life, what advice would you give to somebody who is at the beginning of their journey, like you were a few years ago?
There's a number of things you could do. You could start, if you're a book reader, right? You could read books on angels and just listen to what other people's experiences are. And there's lots of different information out there. You can most certainly listen to podcasts. You don't have to listen to mine. There are other ones out there as well, but listen to what people say about their own experiences. And then you might even find, whether it's through a book or through a podcast, or go to even things like those mind, body, spirit festivals and talk to people. And you can go to some presentations, some free workshops and stuff. I would say the first step is maybe finding out a little bit about this new world that you're looking at exploring, and identify what you really connect with. Because like any world, whether we're talking about being a medium, a psychic, whether we're talking about being a used car salesman or whatever, there's the good and the bad. So you've got to identify with what makes sense to you and trust your inner intuition. But I would find out lots of information. I mean, you can do some searches on the internet. Again, I would just check to make sure that your information is credible, but you'll start to see patterns of things that make sense to you. And you'll go, oh, I've had that experience. Yeah, that makes sense. And then you do kind of like, you start very slowly stepping your feet into the cold water, right, of like the pool on a hot day, and you just start exploring information and just go to different sources. Like I said, go to new age kind of festivals, mind, body, spirit festivals, read books, listen to podcasts, do search on the internet, and just see what really resonates with you, and then take the steps from there. You might even want to have a reading with somebody to see, what are they saying? What, you know, what's making sense to you. So you've got all sorts of avenues of things that you could potentially do.
Dagmar, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and experience with my audience. Thank you so much for being on my show. And if s- if you are listening or watching this episode, if this episode inspired you, moved you, touched you in any way, please share it with the other people, with your friends and family members. So let's inspire them to create a better life for themselves and for their loved ones. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the work you do. Until next time, be brave. Be brave, shine your light because the world needs that love and light inside of you more than ever. I'm sending you lots of love and big hug. Bye for now.